All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Prepping with Sarge. I'm running a couple minutes late today. Life is like that sometimes. Life is like that. I back from, took a day off on Friday to take care of some of my own health needs and came back and had a couple fires waiting to be put out. Had to jump right into it. So running a little bit behind the curve today, so this may be just a little bit shorter stream, but I did get out of the building for a little bit, which is good. Self-care is extremely important. I apologize. My intention was to go down to the river today, and time-wise, that's just not going to be doable. So, all right, we're out amongst the trees. This is where I get my mental health, either in the garden if I can't get out to the trees, or out to the trees. A lot of people like the ocean or the desert or the beach, right? My wife loves the beach. Like if I asked her, where do you feel calm? Where do you feel your inner peace? She'd say the beach. But I've always more been somebody who likes to play in the woods. And it probably has a lot to do with, where I grew up. I grew up in suburbs south of Boston. Hey, Digital Prepper. It was a good weekend. It was a good weekend, but it came right back into the fire here. So I grew up in a really nice neighborhood that had a lot of areas like this around me where you could kind of just go out and play. And, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so a very different time period. Hey, from Oklahoma, thanks for joining me. Appreciate it. In my neighborhood, we had like 6 or 7 boys and like 2 girls. And so a lot of the stuff was, the boys kind of hanging out with each other, and the girls did their own thing, playing. They were doing dolls and stuff like that. So we would go out to the woods and play army, build forts, things like that. So, I think there's a part of each of us that has like our childhood memories that makes a big part of like our comfort zone, right? So there's certain foods that if you eat it, brings you back to childhood, things like that. That's why a lot of times in therapy, working with adults. Poplar Bluff, very good, very good. Thank you for joining in. A lot of times with adults, we'll recommend if they're in therapy with us, we'll recommend, hey, if you ever tried like pulling out a pad of paper and a pen and just draw or doodle, because it brings you back to that, for most of us, safe space in our childhood where we were just kind of like comfortable. It's going to bring me into today's topic. Hey, Family Man Prepper, and talk about mental health during a societal collapse. This is actually a topic I hope none of us have to deal with, but it's come up in some forums and things like that. And I gave Steve from Corsairs Trainers had something on it a while back, and I kind of chimed in my thoughts. So if you guys are new to the channel, I'm a licensed therapist. Worked for like close to, I'm approaching 30 years in the field now. I've worked with all different populations in 3 different states. Public care, private care, you name it. So I have a lot of experience, and I do my side businesses. I do consulting for other people in the field who are trying to learn or trying to become independently licensed, right? So there's a process you go through where you have to kind of work with a mentor to get ready for the licensure test. It takes a couple of years. Then you take the licensure test. If you pass that, then you're independently licensed. It allows you to do more stuff, and you can bill more insurances and things like that. So part of my second job is I do that. I kind of help people get to that point. So what would happen? And this also, I want to tie this into also Sherry Frugal had asked me a few live streams ago to talk about my own ADD and like the fact that I've never taken any medications for ADD. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I said there's pros and cons, and that I would come back to that. So that's where we're going today. So to understand, and you guys can chime in questions, I'll do my best to answer them about specific issues related to this. But to understand what would happen, let's say that it was, what would it take for us to have a complete collapse? Well, let's say something like Europe during World War II, okay? Let's say something like that, where your supply chains are completely disrupted. You don't know if you're gonna be able to get medications for months or ever again, okay? So let's take that as an example. You have to divide this into a couple different categories. So first category, oh, looks like we had a little tree fall over here over the weekend. That's new. Let's see if I can get the camera on that in the background. See that? Right there. That's new. So you'd have your mood disorders, right? So in your mood disorders, you'd be talking about your depression and anxiety and that kind of stuff. And a lot of times that stuff can be treated without medications. But this is where I want to kind of throw in my own personal biases on that. Now, obviously, because I work in the field, I'm very going to tell you that I am pro-medication. We have modern medicine is awesome, and I've seen what it can do to help people. If a tree falls in the woods and Sarge is not there to hear it, does it still make a noise? But I'm also involved in a lot of online groups and things like that for discussion of like prepping, and also do some like foraging, wildcrafting, herbalism, botany kind of things. And I see a lot of people give up bad information on there. Now, I say bad information, you're welcome to disagree with me, that's fine. But there are a lot of people who will say, you really don't need modern medicine at all. Everything can be resolved with, if you know the right plants. Maybe, but this is where the knowledge kind of falls apart, right? So we've got, I'll just give you an example. So people will say, hey, I'm suffering from depression, what should I take? And you'll have all these basically unlicensed people throwing out their answers. And so you'll see, just as an example, a lot of people will say St. John's wort. Okay. St. John's wort has benefit some people with some types of depression, right? So not all depression is the same. There's a lot of different things. It has to do with your synapses and your neurotransmitters and your hormones and your life stressors and your cognitive thinking and all kinds of different things. There's too many factors to say St. John's wort is going to work for every single person with depression. And if if this person has severe depression and you told them go take St. John's wort and that wasn't the right thing for them, you've potentially caused harm because maybe they get so bad that they decide to hurt themselves. So that kind of stuff gets me upset. Hey, Urban Grandpa, it's good to see you. It's well-intentioned. And this is why I don't always tell you, like when I'm out here in the woods and I'm showing you medicinal plants and stuff like that, I don't tell you every single thing. I need you guys to do your own research. And anybody who watches my videos, whether they comment or they're interacting with me or not, I need you guys to do your own research. And I need you to also talk to your doctor. Hey, Her Healthy Home, because St. John's wort, just as an example again, actually interferes with some of the modern medicines that we prescribe for certain situations. So you can actually be inhibiting what your psychiatrist or your nurse is trying to do to help you out. So it's well-intentioned, but it can actually do some harm. And you should do your own research. And I really, the most important piece out of this is to talk to your doctor or your nurse practitioner and say, nowadays most doctors, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Rick. That you just made my day. I was having a rough morning. Thank you. So your doctor, most modern doctors, right? Anyone that's graduated in the last 20 years, and most of the ones who graduated before that, are pretty much open-minded about this now, that people want to use alternative medicines. A lot of people want to use CBDs. A lot of people want to use plant medicines. A lot of people are going to do things like yoga, meditation. And we, as a therapist, we are going to work with you on that second part of that, like the skills-based kind of thing. But what happens if we get to like a situation where the supply chains are so disrupted that you can't get your modern medicine? That's where we're at today, talking about that. So this is where it probably is a good idea to know what are your options, right? Because let's say it's a family member, a loved one that's struggling with something, and there's no Prozac coming for you, right? There's no Risperdal coming for your nephew that's got schizophrenia. There's no, Neurontin coming. There's no gabapentin. There's no... Thank you. Yeah, I love it out here. This definitely helps me to de-stress in the middle of the day. I would want to at least know some of my options, and that's why I personally study plant medicines. And if I had something where I needed, I probably would lean towards modern medicine first, but I would research it and know, can I supplement it with plant medicines and lifestyle changes and things like that. So what can you do as a prepper to help with these kind of situations? Well, again, going back to breaking it down into some different examples, right? So we have the mood disorders. Hey, Sarge, good to see you too. Thank you so much for joining in. So you get your mood disorders, right? So let's talk about that one first. Mood disorders, what you're going to want to do is, let's say you're the helper, right? You're going to be the person that's helping that person in your group that's got depression or anxiety. So a couple things, you're going to want to really, really try to get them moving every day. A little bit of exercise, even if it's only 20, 30 minutes, because that stimulates the brain. That's one of those skills that we need to be working on. For your specific region. Yes, you should absolutely have a mentor. Her Healthy Home is right. If you're trying to learn like plant ID and stuff like that, don't go solely on my videos. My videos are for entertainment purposes only. So you want to have a mentor in your local region, get yourself some books. You can use Google Images and things like that too. My videos can be used to supplement it, but you should not be going off just one person's information. Especially like I talk about with mushrooms, I'm not good with identifying mushrooms. I'm working on it. So if you're the helper, you're going to want to try to get them exercising. If they're a person of faith, you can try to get them praying every day. You can offer to pray with them. If they're not a person of faith, maybe teach them some meditation. Move with Jen has a video up about meditation, and I'll probably do another one at some point. I did one a while back, but I think I moved that. I think either I took it down or I moved it over to my mental health channel. You want to get them eating calories every day. You cannot have strength to get up and move. You don't have the calories. You want to get them drinking water, anxiety. I don't know that one. I've heard of it obviously, but I have never researched it, and I see it for sale in some of the supplement stores and things like that. And I'm not sure if it grows wild here. I just don't know enough about it. And then the big thing, right, for skills, so we're talking now kind of like about cognitive behavioral therapy skills. So we just talked about the behavior piece. Get up and move, do your hygiene, do some, talk to a friend, meditate, pray, all that stuff. Do something creative, right? That's really good for depression. But also the cognitive piece is where you need to learn to recognize your cognitive distortions and start to change them, right? So like a lot of us have adapted those into our brains, into our mindset for decades, since childhood. Somebody along the line told you you're stupid, fat, ugly, worthless, right? It's probably somebody that should have treated you better. Maybe it was a caretaker. Maybe you got bullied. I don't know. But you start to believe those things. Hey, Miss Southern Belle. And so recognizing that that's a cognitive distortion, interrupting it and changing it, if you can help the person do that, you're going to do a lot of good. Again, we're talking about collapse mental health care basically here, if you're just tuning in. All right, so that's like your mood disorder ones. Now let's go to the addictions. Addictions is a hard one. We had a real bad supply chain disruption and people can't get their fix of their addictions. They're going to get dangerous. That's plain and simple. Not every single one of them, but a lot of them, because people are going to get desperate. When you're withdrawing off of some hard drugs. I know, Miss Southern Belle, I agree. And probably most of us have had a little bit of that in our lives. Probably should do another topic on that one too. But so for the addictions, this is where maybe you do a little research in your area. Is there plants that grow in your area that can help with withdrawal a little bit or help with detoxing the body? I don't know. You got to do your own research. I know what the ones here are. And so unless you're in a really extreme climate, I'm betting there's something near you that could be used to help with that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, and coffee, we talked about that. I have that video out, if you guys haven't seen it, on the coffee substitute that grows locally here. It's a native plant to the United States called Yaupon holly, and I can make a coffee substitute out of that. You don't want to see what happens if Sarge doesn't get his coffee. So nicotine, maybe you store some nicotine seeds, tobacco seeds, right? Maybe you, because it's legal to do that. Okay, I'm going to stop here and show you something really cool. Speaking of medicinal plants, hang on. All right, this here is our beautyberry. This is a beautyberry plant, and we can make insect repellent off of these leaves. And this is what the berries look like. I just wanted to show you this real quick because I don't have any footage of this until now. That is your beautyberry berries before they develop. They will turn a beautiful purple color, and those can be used to make dyes. They also have some vitamins in them, and I have to go back to my books. I think it helps with stomach aches, a couple other good qualities. You can make a jam out of that. Yeah, so her healthy home, the problem with the dandelion coffee is it will probably help you with the taste, because it tastes a little bit like coffee, but it has no caffeine in it. So anyone who's like me that's drinking more than 5 cups a day is going to go through some caffeine withdrawal if they can't get it, and they're going to have headaches. They're going to be really moody. Probably not going to be dangerous, but they're probably not going to be pleasant to be around either. Somebody who's got like a addiction to painkillers or some of the anti-anxiety meds, things like that, they're going to go through a rough time if they can't get it. Exactly, digital prepper, exactly. If you can help people to get that stuff out of their system ahead of time, and again, yeah, even the cigarette addiction, that's what I was saying. You can store tobacco seeds. You may have to check your local laws about growing it, but there's nothing. I don't think there's anything that says you can't store them, at least here in the United States. I saw that, Sarge. So, maybe you store back, or find out what the tobacco substitutes in your area are. Yeah, I mean, and they're going to get irritable. They're going to get not too fun to be around, So, and then alcohol, like most preppers will tell you, unless there's a reason, like if you're recovering from alcoholism and you don't want to store it in the house, totally get that. That makes perfect sense. But if that's not something that you really worry about, we're going to turn around and go back this way. Then maybe you store some alcohol in your house so that you could at least help somebody start to wean themselves down, right? And I can't get into too much of that, how to do that. You got to do your own research, or else I'm giving medical advice and then I could get myself into trouble here. Remember, my videos are for entertainment purposes only, but yeah, and I agree with that. But I think maybe other people could do it. I'm not going to kick somebody out, especially if it's somebody that I know, and say, hey buddy, you've got a tobacco and caffeine problem. You can't hang out here until you get that cleared up. I'm just not capable of doing that. It'll probably be the downfall of me eventually. But a good some reference material that I recommend is Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy have a survival medicine book, and they have a website and they have a YouTube channel. Definitely check that out. Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, they are awesome. And a lot of my information comes from them. So, and if I ever get the chance to train with them, I will do that. All right, so let's go to the next one. So that's briefly, yes, but and again, everyone has its price. Don't smoke or drink coffee. Yeah, if you can get yourself off of that stuff before the supply chain got disrupted, you'd be in a much better shape. That bug has been following me. So let's talk about the next one. So now, mood disorders, addictions. What about the psychotic disorders? Now, there are parts of the world where people don't have access to the modern medicine that we do here. And my understanding, I haven't done a lot of research on this, is that the way they approach it is a lot of like group support. So basically like building a village of supporters around this person, including peers. That may not be an option in a collapse type scenario. So what can you do? I could probably come up with some plant alternatives for that kind of thing, but it's not going to work as good as our modern medicines when it comes to antipsychotics. It just isn't, guys. And I bring my own personal bias into this, working in the field, but I can tell you that every single time that I've known somebody who had a friend who told them you need to get off those antipsychotics and just do X, Y, and Z, that person has gotten very sick and ended up in the hospital. There is nothing that we have out here okay, that will work as effectively as an antipsychotic for those types of illnesses. I'm sorry. I'll die on that hill. So if you got a family member that's dealing with that kind of stuff, what would I do? Well, talk to the doctor. Maybe you can get a couple extra scripts and store some back for a few months to maybe that gets you through one of those. And if you have to keep that safely away for whatever reason because you're worried about somebody taking it the wrong way, you can do that as a family member. What if there was no other options? Well, then you're gonna have to go back to assigning some helpers to help this person, because that's a pretty severe thing to be working with. Talking about schizophrenia, or maybe schizotypal. I'm not familiar with that. I will go back and check that out. Thank you. If the person's a little bit on the higher end of that functioning scale, you might be able to teach them reality testing, which is basically if they have the insight that things that they're seeing and hearing and the distorted thoughts are not real, you can teach them reality testing, which is basically being able to talk themselves out of that. So in other words, if they're hearing a voice inside their head that says, hurt yourself or something like that, right? Then you could teach them that voice is not real, it's part of the illness. But my experience with that has been those people have to be pretty high functioning and have some pretty good insight for that to work effectively. So again, you're back to assigning a helper to try to help that person out, keeping a close eye on them, being supportive, somebody that's kind and compassionate, somebody that's going to encourage them to stay on top of their hygiene. It's going to encourage them to, exercise a little bit each day, to talk to people. At the risk of getting demonetized, I'm not going to comment on that last one. I have seen a lot of channels get themselves into hot water about that kind of thing. All right, so what do we have left? We did the psychosis, we did mood disorders, we did substance abuse and addictions. A lot of the other stuff can be in some cases handled with skills. So I'll talk about my own personal experience with ADD right now. This was something that I've kind of. So before I was doing, I waited a long time to do live streams, and part of that was my own self-consciousness about my ADD. I get distracted by all kinds of stuff, and you guys have seen it on stream. Like a butterfly will go by, and I'll be like, "Oh, look, butterfly!" Lose my train of thought. And I've never taken any kind of medications for ADD. So Sherry Frugal asked me to talk about that, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I can tell you that looking back on it, there were periods in my life where I wish I had been prescribed medications. I learned over the years to get pretty good with my adaptive coping skills, so I'll give you a couple of those that work for me. It doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody with ADD, but I keep my headset with me at all times so I can listen to music if I need to kind of block out the distractions in the world. And I also keep headphones with me in all my bags, in my car, in my travel kit, in my get home bag, in my bug out bag, next to my bedstand. Because I wish I had known this when I was in, middle school and junior high. I could have just plugged those into my ears and blocked out a lot of the stuff when I was taking a test, and it would have helped me. Yeah, that's definitely possible, digital prepper. Maybe there's different levels of it. I have to stay pretty active to manage mine. So hence like going out in the middle of the day to do my walks. Oh, I appreciate that, Sarge. I appreciate that. I was very nervous about doing it. I'm getting more comfortable with it now. So when I'm at home, what do I do so I don't drive my wife crazy? I go out in the garden and kind of work out in the yard. And basically what it's like, how to describe this to somebody is that it's like your brain is flicking channels, right? So you're going through, it's like you get a remote control and you're flicking channels. And you're focused on one thing for 30 seconds. The next thing you know, something's distracting you, you're going somewhere else with it. That's a lot of, when it's real bad, that's what it feels like. So when I go out in the yard and I play in my garden, things like that, I can just kind of let that go, and I can jump around between tasks. I can work on my oregano, then I can jump to my peppers. I can go water my front lawn, and not driving anybody crazy in the process of that. And I find, for me personally, by letting that happen a little bit, it relieves some of my agitation and my tension about it, so that when I have to be a little bit more focused and a little bit more on point, I can. That's a really good point. Thank you, Silver Moneybag. I'm glad you brought that up. So the suggestion there was, when you know that a hurricane or something is coming, when you know an event is coming, a lot of times you can talk to your doctor or the pharmacist, and they'll let you fill your scripts early, so that if there's a temporary supply chain disruption, you might be okay. That's a really good suggestion, and I'm glad you mentioned that. All right, so what about, let me cover one last little piece here, and then you kind of get the idea here, right? So I'm not opposed to people who are trying to manage their life without medications, obviously, because that's how I did it. But I also, I'm tempered by my own experience working in the field and seeing the benefits that it's done for people, right? So there are days when I wish my high school and junior high education would have been a lot easier for me, and probably college, if I had been on medicine for it. So I sometimes regret that I didn't, I don't think I really knew what was going on, but I think probably by college I started to figure it out and could have advocated for myself a little bit better. But then I learned the adaptive coping skills, so I'm not dependent on it too. So there's pros and cons to it. So what about somebody who's maybe got like autism spectrum disorder, right? So you got a family member or a loved one, or maybe you have it. Again, coping skills are going to be huge here. People, especially on the higher end of that, can learn to manage, but maybe it's helpful for them to also have a way to have an outlet. So when I've worked with adults with ASD, there's this is just an example. Not everybody with ASD does this, but sometimes they'll do like self-stimulatory behavior. So like they'll, kind of flap their hands or something like that. It relieves tension and anxiety for them. So what I do for adaptive coping mechanisms with people that are dealing with that is I'll tell them, if you need to do that, figure out the when and where of when you can do that, right? So maybe if your tension's building up at work, go in the bathroom and, get your stim out, and then get your anxiety down. Let's try to learn some other skills too, but if you have to do that to manage, that's an adaptive coping skill, right? Recognize that if there's somebody in your group that's with that, it involves a lot more patience, because there's a lot of communication issues and misunderstandings that can go along with, maybe you have a friend or a loved one that's got ASD, and they need a little bit more patience when you're having a conversation with them, because there's, social misunderstandings that happens with that. That's very typical. If it's more severe form of that, definitely going to need a care team to kind of help. Peer support is a huge help, especially if you have somebody else that's struggled with it, right? So let's say we had a big collapse and there's a bunch of 9 scripts. Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that. If I was in a collapse scenario and there was a bunch of people in our group, kids or adults with ADD, I'm going to be the helper. I'm going to have to be, right? So think about that kind of thing. So if you've got a mutual support group, mutual assistance group, maybe it's just your family, maybe it's the neighborhood. Think about who you're going to call on that's got patience and compassion that can help those people that are going to be struggling. Know your plant alternatives, but while modern medicine exists, this is where my own personal bias comes in. While modern medicine exists, why not use it? Why not use it? If there's side effects and things like that, like we were just talking about, that person's gonna have to make some of the decisions for themselves. But like the example I used with schizophrenia, there's nothing that exists out here that I've seen in nearly 30 years in the field that can help somebody as much as a modern antipsychotic. It just is what it is. All right, I hope that wasn't too preachy. I know I've got my own, working in the field, I've got my own biases that I bring into this one, but appreciate you guys being here with me. Anybody have anything you want to plug before we wrap this one up? Anybody got any videos coming out this week? I had a pretty busy weekend doing family stuff, so I have a video that I need to edit, And I don't know that I'm going to get that one out in time for this week, but I am going to go live again on Friday night. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear it, Sarge. You know, I mean, just to show my own empathy with it, I lost my mom to lung cancer, and my personal feeling was that some of the meds they were giving her kind of sped that along. I don't know that it would have saved her if we had done things differently. I'd probably not, but I think there was some quality of life issues that could have been differently. So I do understand the other side of it too. I appreciate everybody here. I will go live again on Friday night for the Prepper Pre-Party. That should be around 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please don't forget to check out each other's channels and support each other. We have a great community here. Everybody that's here in the chat has, a lot of them are content creators, either here or on Instagram. So be sure to support each other and check out each other's content. I really appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of the day. I got to head on back. I got work to do. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.